Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This meeting takes place in the traditional and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Councillor Strong?
I'm just requesting that we move the, where is it now? The strategic planning acceptance to number 1 so that it applies and so that people in the room understand where we're coming from. But
So you're moving that we move 10.2 to 10.1 and 10.1 to 10.2? So that's a motion by Councillor Strong. Is someone seconding that motion? Councillor Fullerton. All those in favor with the revisions, raise your right hand. Motion carried unanimous. So we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. That council approved the agenda for the July 14th, 2026 meeting as revised. Moved by Councillor Strong, seconded by Councillor Fullerton. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Approved. Approval of the minutes. Recommendation that council approve the June 22, 2026 special meeting minutes as presented. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Babineau. Seconded by Councillor Daphne. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 5.2, June 23rd, 2026 regular council meeting. The council approved the June 23rd, 2026 regular council meeting minutes as presented. Someone going to move that? Councillor Babineau, seconder. Councillor Strong. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Well, that part of the agenda was easy. So there are no presentations. So we do have 2 people signed down for public input and questions. And we also have some people that have strolled in a bit late. So what I'll do is I'll call the few people that are signed out up in order. And then what we'll do is I'll ask if anyone else has anything to say. And if you want to get up and speak, you can, where they showed up a little late. So the first person to speak is Scott Clements, social media comms policy.
And I work in broadcasting. Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Scott Clements. I'm the owner of 107.9 Go Rock, and I would like to just make 2 comments on the social media policy. One is, thank you for having a social media policy. I think it's a wonderful thing. I've had a chance to review it. I think you've done a very good job. There is just a couple of comments that I would like to make on it. In the policy, it talks about not archiving information. I tend to understand why that would be a very difficult thing through social media. However, I think that there should be some form of documentation or archiving of things that have gone out to your social media channels. One of the things that we find in the media when we're doing our research for news or any form of civic engagement is that particularly Facebook and some of the other platforms are not very good at being searched. You cannot search these things unless you spend literally, and I'm not exaggerating, hours going through feeds. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. The other thing about it is that we're giving a lot of our abilities to communicate with people to a American company that controls algorithms, and we don't necessarily know how these algorithms are going to impact. Basically, at the whim of Mark Zuckerberg, they can nuke your account and you lose all that information. So archiving, I think, would be very important. Something else I would like to suggest is that items that are shared on social media also be, and this could help in the archiving, shared on the website as well, or delivered through email to a subscribed email list. So that's my first point on your policy. The second one is just to do with policies overall. You are very fortunate that you have a very capable public servant named Jamie Dean, who does a lot of great work with communications. But if we're going to have a social media policy, should we not have an overall communications policy and make that social media policy part of the overall communications policy. I think that by giving Jamie and those that he works with a roadmap or a guide or some kind of legend to work off of, it's just going to make him a more effective public servant. So thank you very much. Is there any questions?
Any questions for Scott? Councillor Strong.
I appreciate your comments, Scott. I have my own thoughts about the social media and its use, especially in a small town. And I think I definitely will be taking that into consideration when we deliberate on this issue. When we first instructed staff to come up with the policy, we'd just been to a Federation of Municipal, whatever it is, in Yarmouth, and we had people telling us that they weren't going to run for re-election because of the horrible abuse that they were taking on social media. So it's really been, and seeing those people be so vulnerable in public and say this in a public setting really left a imprint on me about younger people who won't want to be in politics if this is the way, if the things keep going the way it is going. It's very stressful to be a councillor in a town with a social media, without a social media policy. You see your name thrown around. It's pretty loose and crazy, but I really value that input, and I will be taking it into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have it on the agenda later tonight to discuss, and I'm sure it'll be a lively discussion. You know, I certainly have some experience with social media though recently, and all you have to do is watch the CTV or CBC News last night, and our colleague Mayor Pam Mood and her comments and her personal emotion in the interview. I mean, she was definitely personally upset about the attacks her, and not only her and but her family have been receiving lately. And I you know, it's just gone sideways, it seems, the last few years. So again, it's very important to get a social media policy in place, and I'm sure it'll be discussed later on tonight. So thank you, Scott.
Thank you, everyone.
Next on the agenda is Irma Desai.
Good evening, Mayor, Myra, councillors. What I'd like to talk to you about tonight is regarding the comprehensive MPS LUB review on the motion action list. Yesterday's review board decision on the Solitaire application really changes the urgency of this file. And I respectfully ask council to treat two elements of the review as priority items that can't wait until July 2027, namely the absence of parking minimums and allowable height limits around our harbor. I understand the comprehensive review takes time and housekeeping amendments should proceed as scheduled. However, the review board's decision has now shown us that these two provisions in our current documents are not just imperfect, they're exploitable. And I think when a decision such as this reveals unintended consequences, I think it's responsible for council to respond promptly and decisively so that these issues are not repeated while a broader review is underway. Council doesn't need to wait for the completion of a full review to close these two specific doors to better align with our community's expectations. Both parking and waterfront height can be dealt with as standalone expedited amendments while the broader review continues. The parking problem is not new. It's already caused real disruption in one neighborhood, and this decision now shows it has the potential to do the same in the center of our town. While it seems council's hands are tied with respect to this current development, I ask that parking be pulled out of the general review process and prioritized for early drafting and public consultation, rather than remain in the queue with lower priority items. The same is true for waterfront height. The current LUB permits building heights of up to 63 feet across the entirety of a harbor area site. And this ruling demonstrates that the allowance can be used for development that has nothing to do with marine needs. No working waterfront building in this town requires 63 feet over 100% of the site. That height allowance was written into the bylaw to accommodate genuine marine industrial needs, masts, hoists, vessel servicing, and the rest, and not to provide a blanket height entitlement for general development. During the hearing, Ms. Corson herself alluded to other developers waiting to see the outcome of this appeal. That's not a hypothetical concern. It's a signal that others are positioning to make use of the same opening the board has just confirmed exists. That alone is reason enough for council to close it now rather than mid-2027. I therefore ask council to direct staff to prioritize the drafting of an amendment that removes the blanket 63-foot height allowance as a matter of right across our waterfront and replaces it with a height provision tied to demonstrated marine function. For example, a lower base as of right height with additional height permitted only where an applicant can show specific operational needs tied to marine use. That way, it won't eliminate flexibility for genuine marine operators. And it's a call to stop treating marine industrial accommodation as a general height entitlement. So to conclude, I'm speaking here tonight to respectfully ask council to seriously consider directing staff to separate these two urgent issues, parking and waterfront height, from the general MPS LUB review timeline, and bring forward standalone target amendments on an expedited schedule. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I tend to agree with you, especially on the parking issue. It's been 3 years now since I've been sitting at this table, and we've been talking about the parking requirements for 3 years. So the last council had a motion in front of them to fix the parking problem, but we decided to do a complete overhaul, mainly because of staffing issues, to be quite honest. It was deferred and deferred and deferred. So if we can break it out, I don't know if we can, but if we're allowed to break it out, I do think it has to be an emergency myself personally. So thank you very much for your comments. Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Irma. And I just want to get your name correct. It's Daisy. Dassey. Okay, thank you. And yes, that was actually mentioned to me today by someone else. And of course, we're just reviewing the decision. So I can't comment on anything in that regard. But obviously that conversation will be started as soon as we can get it going. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that wants to speak? Heather.
I think this is still live. Hi, Mayor Myra and Council. Thank you for giving me a chance to speak. This is a bit of a follow-on to Irma's presentation to you. Again, I don't think I'm the only person, but I am speaking for myself that was disappointed in the decision of the Nova Scotia Regulatory and Appeals Board. I see it as a blow to this town, a blow to municipal self-determination, and a blow to democracy. I do hope and ask and urge the town to review it carefully and consider all avenues of appeal, as these boards are not infallible and they are quasi-judiciary, but that obviously will be in consultation with your own legal counsel. But one thing that struck me through the whole process, and one thing I would like you to address for the sake of the children of this community and the people who use the municipal public spaces and the playground on Lower Green Street, as well as the tennis courts, is that repeatedly in her presentations, Ms. Corson of Soltaire referred to those areas as public parking that could be used for her private enterprise, her private profit-driven enterprise. And I have discussed this with my neighbors on Lower Green Street, and we find this very, very concerning. that parking should be used exclusively for children and families for recreation. It shouldn't be used for overnight parking. I've already observed it being used for people boondocking. I don't have a big, huge issue with that, but certainly it should be not overnight parking for parking that blocks access to parks and the tennis courts for children and other people who wish to use those for recreation. So we urge the council to look at having those areas designated as only for parking for people using those facilities, and urge them to please consider also no parking on Lower Green Street, or some sort of, failing that, some sort of parking restriction on Lower Green Street, so that parking is limited. Not overnight parking. We don't need overnight parking there, but parking could be limited to residents of those particular areas, and also children using the facilities. It is my understanding that there are some residents of town who support development of that site of that scale. They don't live nearby the site, but since they're so supportive of it, perhaps the people who potentially may ultimately live there could go park in front of their houses. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. And Councillor Strong said earlier, we just got the results yesterday afternoon of the appeal. So, I mean, to say we're disappointed as a group would be an understatement. We voted 7-0 against the development. So, you know, we did basically everything we could at the time. So we'll have to review it now with staff and legal and actually see what our next steps is if there is any, because we've already spent quite a bit of taxpayers' money on this appeal. So sooner or later we have to, you know, realize when we've lost, unfortunately. So that's why I think Irma's presentation earlier is so important that we get on it right away so it doesn't happen repeatedly. So again, thank you very much, Heather. So does anyone else want to speak? Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So no one else wants to speak. Number 8 is correspondence. We don't have really any correspondence. Number 9 is business arising and unfinished business. We don't really have any of that. So we're going to move on to 10, and we're going to go to 10.2, which is now 10.1, strategic, council strategic priorities.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council, before you tonight is the Council Strategic Priorities of 2026-2027. Before you is a recommendation that Council adopt the Town of Lunenburg's Council Strategic Priorities 2026-27 as the guiding framework for the organization, planning, budgeting, development, and council decision-making moving forward. So council spent in their first year of their term participating in strategic planning to set up processes such as hiring the CAO and working through processes of structural organization of the town. These key areas address governance issues and governance processes that needed to be looked at, benchmarked, and set. What council has done now for their second term is establish new criteria and new decisions in strategic planning relevance. So before you, council, tonight, you do have the copy of your strategic plans and guidelines. So your current goals established at this point in time, if approved, is the electrical utility. You want progress, priorities, and preparing for the future. So you've confirmed a clear path forward for retaining the ownership of the town as a utility. You're prioritizing infrastructure projects, including Green Street upgrades and planned substation improvements. You have near-term actions that can advance and address immediate pressures in high-demand areas, such as Salt Meadows and Blue Rocks. The town is actively preparing for the future energy and electrification of the utility and renewables, and strengthening governance, partnerships, and service agreements where possible. Your organizational capacity is for staffing to sustainable performance. So you're focusing on shifting from recruiting to building a high-performing team and a high-performing standards for the organization staff retention. You have requested a comprehensive organizational development plan, which will guide the town staff and leadership and work culture improvements. New performance management processes will better align with staff objectives and council strategic priorities and goals for service delivery. You wanted to have continued investment in your staff engagement and professional development and to strengthen the collaboration and organizational effectiveness, as well as a review of workflows and productivity that will ensure we are being resource ready and effective in how we align and improve services for the community. You have governance and planning. So this is you're turning your visioning into action. So council is strengthening governance by improving how key planning tools support decision-making, community development, and outcomes. Your updates to municipal planning strategy, which is a key goal that has been discussed already here, and land use bylaw, along with the heritage bylaw, will translate into further community vision and decision-making. You're looking for clear and internal processes and improved understanding of roles and responsibilities while enhancing transparency and consistency within your decision-making processes, strengthening relationships with partners such as Parks Canada and UNESCO, and aligning those with a broader strategy of a heritage framework, and ongoing governance training and quarterly reviews, so more reporting back to council on the progresses that are being made. Your fourth is infrastructure and asset management, so planning for long-term sustainability. So council is committed to providing proactive long-term planning to ensure infrastructure remains sustainable and financially manageable. Comprehensive asset management roadmap is something you have requested and that we'll invest in for decision making, life cycle planning, and reserve funding. Implementation of modern asset management tools such as GIS mapping to improve our data decision making. Addressing housing needs is still remaining a key priority, and while improving in further partnerships to enhance our infrastructure and infrastructure investments. Your fifth goal is communications and engagement, so building trust within your community and moving us to the next level of communications. So this comes into some of the discussions that were brought forward tonight. So recent investments in communication, such as staffing, and what we're looking for improvements to websites and our communication technologies, as well as between staff, council, and the community. The development of formal communications and an engagement strategy that will bring greater consistency to and clarity to town processes and messaging. New policies, including social media and public information, will be transparent, professional, and communication practices enhanced. Expanding our outreach efforts, so to ensure our residents are well informed and have meaningful opportunities for input, as well as council is committed to integrating public engagement into decision making in a structured and accountable manner. Your final goal that you have discussed is an emerging priority, which is looking at the strategic economic development of the community. So council is in the early works with staff to shape the long-term development of the economy for the town. We want to initiate phases and focus on identifying priorities, opportunities, and key questions rather than launching into full strategies. So more of an in-depth review. Engagement with local business leaders, community organizations, and regional partners to understand and inform ourselves of the future that we're coming into and planning for it. Economic development plans will be closely aligned with infrastructure, housing, and land use priorities. While beginning this work is a step forward, there's still a lot of work to come forward with this. So in general, those are the main scopes of what you provided within your council strategies. Before you tonight, council, if you're willing to approve these that you have developed, these are your key themes, some of the factors that are associated with them, and the drive to go forward. Now, noting that the council does have the CCP, the Comprehensive Community Plan, the goal is that these strategies will be overarching of that, where the CCP will be a resource document to further enhance the driving forces of council strategy. So at this point in time, council, that is what we have for your strategic goals at this point for 26-27. Back to you, your worship.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions or comments for Paul? Councillor Strong?
My comment is that the recommendation does not really reflect in a succinct way what the goals were that we established and the priorities for this coming year. And so I would like to introduce a motion that's because we've had trouble with unclear motions in the past. And I don't have to give notice of this. This is for tonight. So my motion would read that council formally adopt the following as strategic priorities as affirmed through facilitated discussion in March 2026. 1, the electric utility, preparing for the future. 2, improving organizational capacity. 3, striving for best governance practices, which includes a review of planning documents. 4, advancing asset management for long-term sustainability. 5, building the trust through communication and engagement. 6, strategic community development planning, which I think is the new framing for economic development from what I'm hearing about through all of the economic development and community development workshops that I've been going to. And then there would be two more parts to that. B, that council direct the staff to arrange a follow-up facilitated workshop in early fall 2026 to further flesh out strategic priorities and planning for the upcoming budget cycle. And C, that council directs staff to reference these strategic priorities to guide operational decisions and planning until otherwise directed. That's finished.
So it's been moved. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Fullerton. Any discussion on the motion of the report? Deputy Mayor, I think someone said you had your hand up. You don't have your mic on.
I do now, I think. Yeah, great. Happy to be here remotely, by the way. So, no, I just wanted to commend Councillor Strong in hitting, I think, the points. I think it's much of it has been said in a more fulsome way by our CAO, but I think it's extremely important that we be concise and very deliberate in giving direction. And I think the 6 items mentioned and the follow-up directions are very helpful. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Babineau?
Not really a comment on the amended motion, but I actually wanted to just circle back to Scott and mention to him that in one of our strategic priorities here, there actually is a line about the development of a formal communications and engagement strategy. So we got you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, there's a motion on the floor and it's seconded. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried unanimous. Okay, now we'll go to 10.1, which is 10.2. Sustainable Cultural Tourism Plan.
Thank you. So there's quite a few things on the agenda tonight, so we're going to do a pretty high level just overview of the information report. The previous council first identified the need for an economic impact study in 2023 to better understand the community's economic, social, and environmental benefits. As discussions evolved, council refined the scope to place greater emphasis on cultural tourism, the economic value of Lueneburg's UNESCO designation, and key community assets. Through funding support through the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, the project expanded to combine the economic impact study with Tourism Atlantic's strategic tourism expansion program, bringing together the town, community partners, and stakeholders to develop a sustainable cultural tourism strategy. Lunenburg's heritage streetscapes, working waterfront, vibrant arts and culture sector are the foundation of our community character and contribute to our UNESCO World Heritage designation. Protecting these assets is essential not only to preserving Lunenburg's identity, but also to sustaining one of the town's most important economic drivers. The Sustainable Cultural Tourism Plan provides a framework for managing tourism in a way that preserves authenticity and maximizes long-term benefits for residents, businesses, and visitors. Tourism has a direct and measurable impact on municipal operations and infrastructure. Parking, public spaces, waste collection, public safety, and other municipal services all experience increased demand during peak tourism seasons. Without coordinating planning and management, these pressures can affect both resident and visitor experience. The focus is therefore not on whether to encourage tourism, but on how to manage it effectively. Municipalities across Nova Scotia are increasingly recognizing tourism as an area requiring dedicated coordination and integration within municipal operations. With the town also moving towards the implementation of a marketing levy, there is an opportunity to establish clear governance framework to ensure that future of tourism investments align with the council's priorities and municipal capacity. The plan is organized around 6 strategic priorities, the first being governance and coordination. To establish and coordinate leadership structure to guide implementation, strengthen collaboration, and maintain momentum across tourism and cultural partners. The second being programming and partnerships to build on existing local, regional, provincial, and federal partnerships to support sustainable tourism, coordinated programming, and ongoing stakeholder collaboration. The third being visitor experience and marketing to enhance the visitor experience through interpretation, wayfinding, placemaking, and communications while preserving the authenticity of Lunenburg's UNESCO World Heritage Site. The municipality plays a central role in balancing tourism with heritage conservation through its close relationships with the community, stakeholders, and Parks Canada. The fourth being waterfront activation and infrastructure to balance public access, tourism, and the working waterfront through coordinated planning, infrastructure improvements, and year-round activation that protects the waterfront's authenticity. The fourth being UNESCO stewardship to strengthen management, interpretation, and the promotion of Lueneburg's UNESCO designation to better communicate its outstanding universal value while supporting long-term conservation and stewardship. The final being Indigenous engagement to foster respectful Indigenous-led engagement and to ensure cultural tourism reflects inclusive and authentic storytelling while supporting reconciliation and long-term sustainability. Staff believe the Sustainable Cultural Tourism Plan provides a coordinated and strategic framework for managing tourism in a way that supports economic development while preserving the cultural identity, authenticity, and quality of life in Lunenburg.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions for Laura? Anybody? Deputy Mayor?
Okay. Yes, thanks. I guess I really want to commend staff for sticking with this effort to ultimately come up with a sustainable cultural tourism plan. As a member of the committee, or a late joining member of the committee, and I know staff have had to pick up from where things were left when they joined the effort as well. So I think it's nice to see this brought to a conclusion and in a way that I think is manageable. And I'd be happy to make a motion of acceptance, if that's in order at this time.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Strong. Any further discussion about the report or questions? Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, I just wanted to, I guess I just wanted to clarify in the motion that accepting the Sustainable Cultural Tourism Plan, I wanted to ensure that the language is in there, that it be used as, that it is the plan as created by 21 FSP, that consultants report that we're moving acceptance of, because there were a number of other documents included and as referenced, but they're extra and not necessarily what Laura reference was what's in the main body of the report, which is what I would be moving. So I'd like to say that the council accept this Sustainable Cultural Tourism Plan as a guide for staff in working collaboratively with community partners and in making recommendations to council as may be appropriate.
Thank you. Is the seconder okay with the way that motion was written? Okay, the seconder is fine. Any comments or questions on the motion of the report? Before we vote, I'd just like to highlight two things that in there, if you look at the numbers, and it was a long report, I think I picked out that the average visitor spends approximately $1,400 while they're here. And that this is just for those that don't think UNESCO means anything, that 2/3 of our visitors come here because of our UNESCO designation. So it's not just me saying that or someone around this table saying that. We actually have data now and proof that UNESCO is very important and vital to this community. So again, I'm really glad that at least that those numbers as well came out, because before this report, we were all just guessing and thinking what, saying what we thought. So now we have some stats and some data. So again, I just wanted to highlight those, because if you're just if you're a regular citizen, you're probably not reading that whole report. So those are some things I picked out of it. So there is a motion, moved and seconded. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see you over there.
Sorry, I just wanted to pipe in and say, the deputy mayor had already thanked staff for their contributions, but I just wanted to thank all of the other members of the committee, the working group, for all their hard work over the last very long time, including, of course, council members. You can if you want. Yes, so just thank you for your contributions and your work on this as well.
Oh, I didn't. Councillor Strong?
Yeah, Councillor Strong. In the very first meeting that I went on to this working group as a resident of the town, trying to balance the residents' interests with the tourists' interests. It was the first time I met Mark Kiley, our director of community development, and I think it might have been your second or third day on the job. And I have to throw you a big appreciation note here, because you pulled together what was easily going in many different directions with incoherent messaging from the council and from the community. We have a lot of pressure on us in the governance of this community from very different sources, and I think you handled it incredibly well. So thank you so much. And Laura, you too. You were there the first day too.
Thank you. And echoing comments around the table, we knew once Mark and Laura jumped into this right after they were basically hired and they didn't walk out the door, that we had two hopefully two keepers. So again, thank you very much, because if that didn't scare them away, nothing would. So there is a motion. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, motion carried, unanimous. Now we'll move on to 10.3, decision on the Affordable Housing Grant Program, the HAF initiation, Housing Accelerator Fund Initiative.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm back here again to talk to you about this HAF initiative. I do want to flag, I'm not going to give a presentation, so we can move on this evening. So nothing has really changed from June 23rd in terms of the report. There was a few clarifications in there after discussion with CMHC regarding our timelines and initiatives. So the timeline had originally been set at January 31st, 2027. It indicated that we may be able to accept applications slightly beyond that. That was the extent of the information that was provided. Thank you, CMHC. In addition to that, there was a clarification around who would be eligible and eligible for what regarding the addition of accessory dwelling units. So that was added as another eligible project and as an eligible applicant. The condition being that it is your primary residence. That would be the condition attached to that. I did not receive any questions, comments, or concerns, critiques from this council. I did receive some from other people. However, yes, just open for discussion. So thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Are there any questions or comments about the report? Anybody?
No.
Oh, Deputy Mayor?
Hi, yeah, so I just didn't want to let the opportunity go by without mentioning, no, there were no comments for me, Alan. It's a very comprehensive and detailed process. And I know it's a requirement of our funding, and so I certainly don't want to stand in the way of that being a potential positive outcome. I worry about its it's practical, practical use as a policy, but be that as it may, I know it's been a lot going to defining all the details, and just keep my fingers crossed that because it's hard to envision how it may all roll out. So I just hope that it would serve both the community and any potential applicant well.
Thank you. Any other comments? Is someone prepared to move the recommendation? Councillor Fullerton?
Yes, I move that we accept the recommendation of staff to adopt the Affordable Housing Grant Program as presented in Schedule A.
It's removed. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Greek. Any further discussion or question on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, motion carried unanimous. Now we'll move on to 10.4, ICE allocation policy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Council. My report is before you to consider the proposed ICE allocation policy and refer the policy to a future regular council meeting for final approval. The proposed ICE allocation policy establishes a formal, fair, and transparent framework for allocating ICE time at the Lueneburg War Memorial Arena. It provides clear direction for staff while ensuring consistent decision-making when demand exceeds available ICE time. Our arena serves a variety of community users, including youth organizations, schools, recreational groups, tournaments, and individual renters. With ICE demand regularly exceeding available capacity during peak periods, a formal policy is needed. While ICE has historically been allocated using established administrative practices, there has not been a council-approved policy to formally guide the process. With this proposed policy, it establishes clear guiding principles and allocation priorities. It promotes fairness, equity, transparency, and accountability. It defines user categories and outlines expectations related to conduct, cancellations, insurance, and facility use. It uses an ICE allocation matrix as a tool to assist staff when requests exceed available ICE time, considering factors such as youth participation, community benefit, accessibility, residency, and historical usage. Lastly, it clarifies the roles of council and staff by having council set the policy framework while staff manages the day-to-day implementation through operational procedures. The policy formalizes existing practices rather than significantly changing how most user groups access our ICE times. It aligns with best practices used by many municipalities operating arenas across the country and provides a consistent framework for managing a limited community resource. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the ICE policy? Anybody? Councillor Greek.
Thank you very much for this, Christy. It's definitely gives a lot of detail and I think definitely breaks down quite a bit for me, how we're prioritizing the ICE time. One question that I did have was within mainly the ICE user priority ranking. Is there any way of deciding who kind of gets the priority within each user group?
So there is a matrix where you will be marking. So, and I will say too, I should clarify that there really isn't going to be a ton of changes to the current users. This will be more so for deciding factors going forward. So basically there is a calculation tool. I'm not sure if it was included in this package or not, but we do have one that we can provide that you just start using marking through. So it could be through, we start with like the youth and it goes down through those different groups to come up with a score to ensure that when we are getting these requests that we are responding appropriately. But yeah, we can provide that tool. I don't believe it's not in this package. No, but yes, fun math. But
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the ICE allocation policy? Councillor Daphne.
When you're deciding who gets the ICE time and stuff, how long, like there won't be a delay. Like I won't be sitting here and all of a sudden I can swim in the rink because the ice is gone.
I hope you're not swimming. 'Cause we got a problem. No, so right now, what happens is sometimes there's cancellations or unavailable ice time and there's a wait list. And right now it's just on a piece of paper. So folks can put in like a formal request to have these ice times when they become available and go down through it. So right now there is very, very few options, but it does happen. And to make sure that we are providing it to the folks. So we've had people request to see this policy throughout our last season, and we did not have one to provide. So going to conferences and trainings, it has been identified as a tool that should be had to make sure that, you know, if female hockey groups are reaching out, that we are being fair and equitable to all groups. So we want to fill our ice times as quickly as possible, not to leave them vacant, because then it's just sitting there melting.
I'm not done.
Councillor Daphne, again, you guys can arm wrestle.
To go over and.
No, I was just gonna say girls hockey rules over boys hockey, that's all.
But
Girls hockey rules over boys hockey.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
actually wanting to look.
That was just one example. But yeah,
No, it's true.
Yeah.
Girls are better at everything.
put that in the minutes.
Okay, Councillor Strong.
I want to thank you, staff, for bringing this forward. It's a great thing. And I just was thinking about it as you were talking. And one of the very first human rights cases that I studied in law school was about women using ice rinks and signing up and being able to use it against a policy that had been used for years and years and not thinking that it was discriminatory. So I commend you, and it's just another example of keeping up with current ways of looking at human rights law. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody? Paul?
Through your worship, so staff and I were going through looking at ice schedules and processes of levels of service. And just so council is aware, we usually staff the arena for about 87 hours a week with staffing, with 59 hours of that rented, whether it's municipal programming all the way down to random rentals that we have. So it's important that we have a policy that helps efficiently manage the ice rentals, the ice allocations and processes from scheduling at the start all the way through to the end of the ice season. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks. I'm curious. I honestly, I have not read this. To just, you know, to be upfront, the package for tonight's meeting was extensive, and I knew there was no opportunity to have passed this tonight. So because of it's a first look, but I haven't read it. But I did skim it while Christy was speaking, and I noticed one thing that I think needs to be amended just right off, just for information, and that is the fact that Mahone Bay isn't mentioned. So the town of Mahone Bay doesn't have an arena. They have traditionally used the Lueneburg War Memorial Community Center arena as their home arena as well. So I think I saw that the town of Lueneburg residents and municipality, the district of Lueneburg residents were mentioned and not them. And I just think that we may want to look at that as well. An FYI, but also I'm very curious. I know as a best practice, having a policy is always a good thing. But and I know that there was a group that took issue with the ice time being offered them. But other than that, has there been much contention or issues with finding ice time for those groups, teams that are looking for it?
I would say there's really never enough ice time. Often lots of comments are made that we could fill more than one pad, although we only have the one. There is, some high school hockey teams that have been looking for additional time. And also often the Western Riptide female team also looking for additional one, and sledge hockey as well.
Any other comments? Paul?
Through you, Your Worship, just for clarification, Deputy Mayor, don't disagree with Mahone Bay looking to be added and amended to this. The reason why they weren't was the town of Lueneburg and the district, the modal, provide funding towards the arena, and that was where that was an allocation. If council wants us to amend to include Mahone Bay, that's not a problem. It's just a matter of what you would like in the policy.
Yeah, I do agree. I think Mahone Bay should be added. We have a great relationship with Mahone Bay, and we have, amenities that they don't have and vice versa. So again, we've always worked well with them in the past. So adding them would be, I think, a smart move. And it was probably just an oversight, quite frankly. So again, I think the policy is good to have because whether we've had a lot of complaints or not, or a lot of trouble or not, in today's world, everybody wants to see the policy. It's not good enough that that's what we've done for the last 50 years or we have to actually show people the policy when they ask for it. So if we have something in writing and we can show it to them, it sort of definitely helps staff deal with maybe some fairly touchy situations. So again, that's why I think the policy is a good thing to pass. Again, we won't be passing it tonight, but there are some recommendations in front of us if anyone's prepared to move that recommendation. Councillor Babineau.
Yeah, I'll move that one. I move that council provide official notice of its intent to consider the ice allocation policy and refer the policy to a future regular council meeting for final consideration and approval.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Councillor Fullerton. Any further discussion or question on the motion? We'll have lots of time when it comes back to council if you can think of any questions in the meantime. So everybody in favor of the recommendation, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried 6-1. Deputy Mayor voting against it. Thank you, everyone. So now we'll move on to 10.5, information report, town and water utility capital project status updates.
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening, we have an update for council on the status to date, or at the date of the writing of the report, which was June 30th, of the town and water utility capital budgets. So similar to the status updates from the previous year, broken them into completed projects, which we already have one ticked off, that hopefully a lot of people saw the update on Facebook and the website about the biofilter at the wastewater treatment plant. We have projects in progress. We have the projects in the preliminary or early stages. And then the fourth category is the projects currently on hold. So I don't think it's a good idea for me to go through them line by line, but if there are questions about specific projects, maybe that's the best way for me to address them. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyson. Are there any questions or comments for Tyson around the table? Councillor Babineau.
I did have a question about the tank bypass. You noted here that you were developing a concept, but you've switched to a more innovative approach that could significantly decrease construction costs and schedule. Are you able to sort of expand on that at all?
So the role that the tank at the water treatment plant on Northwest Road plays, it helps with the contact time for the chlorine. So the bypass line has to still perform that task that the tank performs. So initially we went with a fairly generic version of this based on some discussions that the consultant we're working with had with Nova Scotia Environment and Climate Change, not in the context of our project specifically, but a general conversation led them to sort of develop a more innovative, less pipe orientated approach that would be much simpler for us, potentially much less pipe. So at the moment, we've proposed that concept to Nova Scotia Environment for their review before we proceed further with it. And just awaiting their comments.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the report? I'd just like to add that it's a substantial report. There's a lot going on. There's not many fancy ribbon cutting projects in front of us, but every project that's here is very important work that needs to be done for the improvement and the longevity of our community and make us more basically ready for growth. And some of the stuff is just, we had to do it. So again, nobody raves about pipes under the ground. They all want to see pavement and sidewalks, but this is work that has to be done. So again, I thank staff. It's a pretty substantial list. So if the community wants to see what's going on, this is a great report to let them know where some of our tax dollars are going. So thank you very much, Tyson. That's for informational. Oh, geez. Sorry, I always miss someone on TV.
Sorry, I'm very sorry not to be there in person, but I'm also not sorry since I'm here with my new grandson. But I did have a question for Tyson with respect to what was happening on Maple Avenue, and I know in a brief discussion there was explained. I'm hoping it could be explained how the viability of sidewalk on Maple Avenue and the connection to the trail and how one is dependent on another, and what the timing of that might look like if it's possible for that to be explained a little more fully.
Through the chair, yes, I can certainly address that question. So under section 3 in the projects in the preliminary or early stages, we outlined the viability study for the crosswalk and sidewalk of Victoria and James, and also the sidewalk along Maple, which would be sort of where Dufferin and Maple split up to the connection with the Bay to Bay trails. So that work's currently underway. I think it'll take a couple of months to get to a position where we get the recommendations we're looking for those reports. And then in section 4 of the staff report, we have the projects currently on hold. So understanding that sidewalk could be a component of a larger scope for Maple Avenue. So we have the Maple Avenue road reconstruction, the Back Harbour Trail accessibility improvements, depending on the recommendations from the viability study, a potential sidewalk. And then under the water budget in section 4 as well, we have the Maple Avenue water main renewal. And that's an existing cast iron water main that was installed in the 1890s. So probably if we're doing the road reconstruction, it's probably a good opportunity for an upgrade there. So the viability study will help define that fuller scope for Maple, and then there'll be a subsequent design RFP trying to incorporate all those components, including the trail tie-in, replacing that staircase portion that I think we're all familiar with.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
I understand you'd need to make a connection, or you would want to make obviously a connection between a sidewalk on Maple Avenue and access to the trail. I guess I'm wondering why it couldn't happen concurrently with an adaptation for the connection points to be made at some point. That I guess wondering we budgeted to have that staircase eliminated, and that I assume that means some kind of switchback winding accessible trail extension. But is there something other than that I'm missing, or is it just a matter of wanting to make the connections and kind of ensuring the pieces happen in a proper order?
Through the chair, I think we probably all have our thoughts on the way it may work. It's really trying to make use of the recommendations, including the alignment and whether it's the sidewalks along the curb line or it's back from the curb line or which side of the street it goes on, and making it work with all the other components like storm drainage, the grading on the road itself, those components. So you may be exactly right on what the trail connection requires. That's kind of a logical conclusion you've probably drawn there. But it's following the process in order to get the best result. And I don't think that waiting for this viability study to be done compromises continuing the design sort of later this year into early next year, and then being ready to tender and then potentially complete that full civil scope, because I think there's potential savings in having it as one package, getting one contractor either performing the work or performing as the general and having the trades underneath them, rather than splitting the scopes up and having multiple contractors trying to coordinate that kind of scope. So that's the intention there.
Thank you very much. That makes a lot of sense. And I think you said the golden words when you said perhaps, efficiencies and saving money and having one contractor oversee, which is, very wise, and appreciate that added commentary. Just also, while I have the floor, just about the recommendation, I was just a bit confused, and it says it's for information only, but then it says if we want things to continue, we should direct. So that is that intended to be if there's changes to what you're proposed, what's being detailed here?
So through the chair, staff's intention is to deliver the capital budget the way that council passed them on February 2nd. So yeah, I can see that maybe the recommendation isn't as clear as it possibly could be, but it's more saying if there are changes in the direction, then council would need to provide that.
So if we don't change direction, there's no action taken, so there's no motion, right?
Through the chair, there is no motion really associated with this report as a for information report. So the recommendation is just to reaffirm that. Next time I do a capital status update, we'll improve the wording there to make that clearer. Thank you for the feedback on that.
Excellent, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none or seeing none, we go on to 10.6. Request for direction, Lueneburg Academy rental space.
Thank you, Council. Tonight before you is a report seeking direction from Council on some information as it pertains to the Lueneburg Academy and the number of rental spaces that are available. So currently we have class afloat, which has left the Lueneburg Academy as of June 30th, and the pre-primary program that the school board had has now moved to the Blue Nose Academy. So that opens up 3 vacant spaces within the Lueneburg Academy. At this time, understanding that the current setup is that it is an education, a heritage, and a cultural facility. Looking at that from the scope of viability of rentals, we know that Class Afloat, when they informed us, we were working with the Lueneburg Academy Foundation to identify options and opportunities to fill the space. We actually now have somebody interested in that. However, they're slightly out of the scope of what is offered within the Lunenburg, within education, culture, and heritage. It's more in a professional services realm, in a health realm, but they are an interested party that's interested in renting the facility. When we're looking at the academy as a whole and the vacant space, I do want to reference in the report back to the finance section of the report, which was provided so that council understands that the current status of this, we're estimating operating cost losses here, looking at about $72,000. The total revenue of the budget from pre-primary was $103,000. They've paid some already this year, so we're actually going to see a reduction of about $69,000. So just for council's awareness, that in 27, 1 cent of the tax rate is $45,000 in revenue. So the potential impact right now on tax rate is estimated at about 0.0226 cents on the mill rate. But back to the matter at hand, with the structure of the building and the use of space, staff are seeking direction from council how we would like to open up opportunities for rental and an expression of interest. Giving council some options within the report. Now, these are just options. These are not full recommendations, and seeking direction from council. So we can continue as a cultural, creative, economic hub. So something similar within the discussions that have been had under the cultural tourism strategy. You know, do we develop this area for artists, makers, creative professionals in that light? We've discussed options down the line here of expansions of museum archives, heritage programming. Is it general office space that we rent to further professional options? Could be legal, could be engineering, could be other. Do you want to do targeted outreach of cultural heritage organizations? Again, following that, we've also talked about educational and training opportunities. So is there potential there? And just putting one out was a potential for the relocation of town hall, just as looking at it from a financial aspect and a functionality of staff on one floor, knowing that there are longer term costs as it comes to this building and renovations. Just putting it out there as an option, not to say that there aren't other options available, but realistically just trying to give council a broad spectrum of ideas to look at, and seeking direction from council. How would you like us to proceed as it comes to the Lueneburg Academy and filling the vacant spaces? Understanding, council, you did receive the Lueneburg Academy Foundation strategic planning information as well that still highlights cultural heritage and education as the main components. But is council open to other opportunities for filling the vacancies, or would you like us to focus on those three criteria? So back to you, council, seeking strategic direction.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments? Councillor Daphne.
Okay, so there's a few things in here that make me prickly. And I won't go into that tonight. But I think we need to be very careful when it comes to the academy and how we proceed with the academy. Yesterday, I was having the coffee soft serve from Mike's, which I got to say was damn good. And I was sitting over in the tan yard. What are you laughing at, Greek? Because you would have it too. So I was sitting over in the tan yard with a friend of mine, Marcia Powers, and this car stopped in front of us, and out popped a family of 4. And we were watching them, and the dad was trying to do a selfie with the family, and there was 2 teenage girls, and they were just giving the dad gears because he couldn't get the picture right. And Marcia and I watched for a few minutes, and I said, Marcia, I can't take this anymore. So I went over and I asked them, I said, do you want me to take a couple pictures for you? And the father said yes, because I won't be going home with them if I keep messing up. So I took a few pictures. The family was from DC. So I asked, did you drive here or whatever? And they flew to Bangor and then drove up this way. And they said, unfortunately, we thought we could do New Brunswick, PEI, and Nova Scotia. We had no idea. And so I asked, what did they do in Lueneburg? And the first thing she said was, we went there. And she said, we could have spent so much time at the academy. And I think that speaks volumes of what we have here. I asked them, I said, did you go here? Did you go there? Did you whatever? And it's like, no, because we need to go home. And we need to come back. So to my colleagues, we have to treat the academy very carefully, very specially. And like I said, there's a few things here. And as Paul said, it's not written in stone, but the Daphne ire will come up if this comes up for discussion, and some of those things are brought up.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor Strong?
Just weighing in here as the board representative or the town representative on the board of the foundation. I am surprised that this is in the agenda and that I had no heads up on this before it ended up in an agenda. And at the same time was working really hard with the foundation. Several of them are here, developing a strategic policy, paying out money to have that strategic direction gifted to us, basically. Looking at a cultural heritage document that addresses the academy, the academy, the academy. I just don't like being taken by surprise, I guess, is my bottom line. And I'm acutely aware of the time and activity that goes on through the Lueneburg Academy Foundation to preserve this thing for us. It's like a town with a private fundraiser working on its behalf. And I just feel I've got feelings going on here, and I probably am not making sense, but I'm just taken by surprise that I'm hearing about a health and wellness occupant. And these are things that I should be aware of before I come to a meeting.
Any other comments? Councillor Babineau?
Just throwing it out there for consideration with my colleagues, if we think that this should go to a committee of the whole meeting for more thorough discussion.
Any other discussion? Oh, Councillor Daphne?
Let's do it.
No. I think the deputy mayor has her hand up, but there's two heads in the way. So, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Well, I respect what Councillor Babineau is saying, and I think there needs to be further discussion for sure. But to the point that was made earlier about we were in the academy and subsequently the town was in a very good position where operating costs were basically covered by tenants paying to be in the building, and now we're in a less favorable position with some changeover, and this is the first time we've experienced this. So after it's become full, I mean, people had been looking for space prior to, and it simply wasn't available, and there were all sorts of ideas of what else could happen in the building, but it was fully occupied, basically. So, but to the point made by Councillor Strong, I thought it was a surprise to me that there wasn't in the minds of our staff a go-to action on filling the building. I had thought through the discussions that had been had previously and the documents that we had before us, and that we've been working with collaboratively with other organizations, that it was quite clear. So I would like to propose that we not delay action taking place on dealing with the situation, and make a motion that council directs staff to promptly prepare and advertise a call for expressions of interest for the space available for rent in the Lueneburg Academy. with criteria established through consultation with the Lueneburg Academy Foundation Board of Directors and Council, of course, and subsequently approved by Council.
So there's a motion on the floor, so I'm prepared to second that motion. Councillor Strong, any further discussion or question on the motion? Paul?
Through you, Chair, can the council provide clarification on what is the strategic goal of the building? Do you wish to maintain the current with what has been presented in the strategic plan for the Lueneburg Academy Foundation as education, culture, and heritage? Or is council interested in other to be discussed with the Lueneburg Academy Foundation to be brought forward to council? Staff are seeking direction as to what is the parameters that council would be looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments? Deputy Mayor?
I definitely think that there's a hierarchy, and that is the reason I would the motion is framed that we do an expression of interest. Expressions of interest don't commit us to anything, but it is an opportunity to see what the interest may be in the building by any type of organization. There'd certainly be, and I think we would determine or define that there is some preferred in criteria that there would be a preferred type of tenant, but I think we don't know what may be possible by putting an expression of interest forward, and that the results of that, the responses to that call for expressions of interest may ultimately determine what can happen. I also think it's important to point out that there may be some restrictions around zoning and around that kind of thing that need to be considered, which I am not fully aware of, but which I would assume staff would apprise themselves of fully and consider, ensure that we do whatever is required to be in compliance.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns? I'd just like to make a comment, I guess, that I agree with the motion, and I think we want to be very careful that we don't rush into finding a tenant just for the sake of having a tenant. We've seen that happen in facilities elsewhere around the community recently, and I don't think we want to make the same mistake. We want to make sure whoever we get in that building fits the whole criteria and model of that building. So again, I think working with the Academy Foundation staff and then coming back to council, we'll be able to find, the right tenants in the long run. Like the deputy mayor said, there were people interested in renting space there a year or so ago, and even 3 or 4 years ago. But fortunately, I guess we were full, and now we're not full. So again, I think this is this facility probably won't be full by the end of this year. It's probably going to take a while to find the right tenant. But again, expression of interest I like, because we might have a proposal sent to us that we've never thought of that both of us can agree on. So again, I do like the motion, and I'll be supporting the motion. If there's no other comments, those in favor raise their right hand. Opposed, motion carried, unanimous. Now we'll move on to 10.7, social media policy.
Hi, thank you. So for decision tonight, we do have the draft social media policy, which council has discussed a few times now at some meetings. So at the last meeting, the only change council had directed was to revise section 6.3, which is the moderation of comments, to make it a bit more robust. So those edits have been made and are highlighted in yellow through within your agenda package. But for the benefit of the public here tonight, I'll just kind of go over quickly the highlights of the policy. So the policy does propose that comments and public replies will generally be turned off on social media where the platform allows. At the same time, there is a bit of flexibility. So if staff council were to decide there's a certain project or an engagement initiative or emergency communications, and it was felt that comments would be beneficial, they could be enabled, but again, the default would be disabled comments. So the policy also highlights by shutting the comments off, there are various other ways to get in touch with the town, including contacting staff, reaching out to council members, attending meetings, participating in surveys and other specific engagement opportunities. It also notes in the report that we are working towards a digital engagement platform that will be embedded to our website. So that's specifically where if we are asking for public input and engagement, comments, it would live on that platform rather than on Facebook where it's harder to monitor and not always a staff resource 24/7, whereas the engagement platforms would be. So essentially we're looking to turn our current social media pages, which is Facebook and Instagram, into like a bulletin board. So we're sharing the information rather than an engagement platform. And then we're offering those other avenues for engagement where appropriate. Also, as a part of developing the policy, we kind of looked at what other municipalities in Nova Scotia are doing. So there's a few examples there within your report. Some municipalities have already done this where they've defaulted to disabled comments, while others more heavily moderate comments. So with that, that's pretty much the bulk of the policy. And it is here for decision tonight because council gave it notice last time. But if anyone wants to walk through any parts of it or has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Councillor Daphne.
So this, just some thoughts about the social media policy. It's no surprise to my colleagues and a few residents who I gathered opinions from that I have an issue using the default setting comments off for social media postings by the town. I understand my councillor page would be exempt from this proposed policy. With the setting in the default mode of comments off, there are pros and cons. Social Point, the proposed community engagement forum, also has its own pros and cons, which I'll touch on in a moment. Comments off. The pros, the biggest pro, no heated public arguments or harassment leading to hate speech or community division. And staff time would not be required to monitor the postings, and zero misinformation would not be spread. Comments enabled shows transparency. Differing views in a respectful manner are okay. Opportunity for an online community, shared experiences could be a better idea. Encourages discussions instead of just reading or moving on and thinking this is the way it'll be. So that's it. So let's just go with the flow. Multiple viewpoints from our diverse community. We need to hear from everybody in every form of walks of life, age, gender, disability, or whatever. Multiple viewpoints form a strong community for everyone. Social Point, the proposed town community forum, comes with a price tag. And Kayla, you can 15 to 40,000 annually. Granted, this cost could be more financially prudent than thousands of dollars spent monthly on staff labor cost. Social Point is used by HRM. The last time I checked, our population was just maybe below HRM by 500 people. So are we sure that Social Point is the correct software for us? Pros of Social Point. I do like the pin dropping feature in the widget social mapping. Hub and Spoke is another widget that caught my eye. Residents can instantly see project stages. There are many different widgets that may be enacted covering various topics. Sounds great. Just like a hot fudge sundae on a summer afternoon. My triggering points are that Social Point is designed to function as a structured municipal hub where residents can view local initiatives and have questions answered transparently. My problem is whose structure? Who chooses which widgets to employ? How much should we depend on AI? AI cannot pick up on human emotions, sarcasm. Will points be lost or altered by AI? Will staff proofread a report before it comes to council? Damn straight they will, because we have an excellent staff, which kind of counteracts what I'm going at, but I like my staff. However, my point is that there are questions to be asked and answers supplied. So where am I? Where am I sitting on the issue of default setting of comments being turned off? Councillor Strawn and I have had some really energetic discussions. I still don't know. I honestly don't know where I'm going, but here's what I do know. I'm sitting in this chair because of who I am. I have no problem standing alone in my beliefs. I have no problem in using my mouth. I have no problem saying the words that others don't want to say. My parents taught me to put others ahead of myself and to give back where I can and able. And I'm trying in this instance to put the town first. Am I doing it right? I don't know. I just know that I don't have a clear understanding of parts of this policy and if it truly does benefit the residents. So I probably confused you more because I've confused myself even more. But as Councillor Strawn knows, we've had many back and forths. I had to get out on the.
Thank you, Councillor Doffey. Any other comments? Councillor Babineau.
Thank you for that, Councillor Daphne. I appreciate your viewpoint. I will also put a viewpoint out there that people probably won't agree with, which is that I don't think we should have a Facebook page at all. I think to your point about the price tag for social pinpoint, very valid. But the reason that things like Facebook are free is because we're the product. We are all collectively being profited off of by using that platform. I don't agree with any of these platforms, really. I don't think it's appropriate for a municipality to be using them. I think we have a website. I think we could use email. We could use lots of things. Just offering a different viewpoint here. I'm in support of this policy as it's presented here tonight. I will say that. I know that removing Facebook entirely is a step that probably we won't take, and that I'm okay with that. But I appreciate you being so honest with your feelings. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, concerns? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks. I have a number, and I appreciate the perspectives of both my council colleagues. Like Councillor Babineau, I begrudge the use of Facebook so generously by so many corporate and private and personal, but it does seem to be the most practical and the most direct way of reaching people at this point, sadly. So I do think we do need to move forward with it. I'm definitely, for many reasons, I think I mentioned before, in favor of the default of having comments turned off. I think, as was mentioned, the beauty of Facebook is in its information sharing. I think Kayla described it well, as a bulletin board type use, and that's as a corporate communication tool. I think that's how it serves us best. When it comes to other forms of engagement, it may at times become useful, and I wouldn't want us to not have the opportunity to take advantage of that should it arise. But I think the default needs to be on comments off. I do have some concerns, though, with the policy, despite having seen it and having had a chance to comment on it a couple of times previously. I still think it's quite long and detailed, and perhaps, to its detriment in some ways. I think often the simpler we keep things, the better, the more straightforward, the more easy to understand, the more user-friendly. And when we try too hard to capture every single thing that we may want to monitor or mention, we're invariably going to miss something, or it just gets very, very long and difficult to get through. And I'm not sure that always serves us well. So I'd be in favor of a pared down version of what we have here. And I'm also actually very frankly, very, and I've mentioned this to Kayla, but haven't and have still struggle, frankly, to articulate my issue. But it has to do with roles and with the authority of council. And I think the authority of council is somehow lacking in this policy. And I know the authority of council is in approving the policy, but there are places in the policy where I think it's important to insert the important oversight that council has. And it was actually kind of mentioned in some of the discussion about, with if we're going to use it for engagement, then it's because of council direction and because of, staff looking to meet a strategic goal of council. And yet reading that's not obvious to me in reading the document. And there are places in it where we say, where I think it's, I'm just going to try to point out an example. It says, under ownership and authority, the town will determine which social media platforms are used and so on. Well, who are we, obviously council staff would make recommendations, but I think it might ultimately, or it may need to be with the approval of council, what actual social media platforms are being used. And to the point that was made of a new one that was being mentioned in the staff report, I know nothing about that. And if it comes with a cost, it's going to have council approval, and we need to have a full briefing on the pros and cons and the benefits and the community benefit and so on. And so I just don't see that clearly defined in all of the verbiage that we have here in the policy. So I really wouldn't be prepared to approve it wholesale this evening.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions around the table? All right, Councillor Strong.
I'm just circling back to what we heard in the first few minutes of this meeting, Mr. Clements, isn't it? And wondering whether maybe we went in backwards in developing the policy, and that it should flow out of a communication policy. Because we've created a big policy and yet I don't know where the guidance is, and I don't know where the administrative parts of it are, and we have actually questions here tonight about whether we need it or not, right? So maybe we start with, we hate to reinvent the wheel here because we have spent a lot of time on this, but if we developed our overall communications policy first, and this was a part of it, maybe it would make more sense in being crisp and aligned with our strategic priorities, like electrical, or like sending messages out to the community about the electrical being down or whatever, like that kind of thing. Like it would be articulated as to what gets posted. And as for comments, everybody can share and then make their own comments. So I'm not too concerned about disabling comments. I am concerned about comments staying there for 24 hours that are incorrect, that are misleading, that other residents may rely on and make a mistake as a result of. So I am in favor of disabling comments, and maybe we just do it on a trial period. But that's a lot of instruction, but I think basically I've now thought about it, and that the communication policy comes first, and then we determine whether we even use Facebook anymore. There are many people that are writing opinions out there right now that Facebook will be gone by January 1st. So that's my input. Thank you.
Anybody else? So I have a few things I'd like to say. First of all, I would say that even though the document is a long document, I do support the document. We've talked about a social media policy for 3 years now. So I think it's time we actually pass the policy. And while I respect all my colleagues' comments and opinions, I'd like to say that both training sessions I've went to recently, one in Yarmouth and one in Edmonton, was discussed about social media and the fact that the abuse and the hatred that elected officials are taking at every level. And I think you'll see a lot more communities are currently working on disabling comments right now that actually have it. It's becoming more and more the norm because, quite frankly, there's no way to really react or interact on Facebook and eventually get a positive result, because people will say what they want and there's no recourse at all. So I've seen from personal experience, I've seen many people around this table and many of my colleagues from across the province that both personally and their families have been attacked and, unfairly accused of things with no recourse whatsoever. So I don't see comments benefiting anyone. We've said here repeatedly that we don't take direction and we don't take our decision-making process from social media comments. So since we don't supposedly read them and don't take direction from them, then why are they on there? Except for someone to spew hatred, to be quite frank, on there, and there's no way to stop it. So again, every educational session that I've went to in the last 6 to 8 months, this is becoming the norm. I think our MLA has her comments turned off at this point, and it doesn't take, you don't have to look far to see why the comments are turned off. Like I said, I've seen people around this table, myself included, that have been harassed and abused through Facebook, and there's nothing we can do about it. We can talk to each other about it, but we can't stop it, and we can't prevent it, and we can't correct it, because no matter what we try to say and engage, the worst thing you can do, in my opinion, is engage on social media, because then you're just going to really stir up the crazies, right? So, I mean, honestly, I don't see any positive, quite frankly, on leaving comments on. But again, and that's from hearing it from, we saw people basically crying in Yarmouth at the conference that were on council for 6, 7 years, 12 years, that are now resigning before their term's even up, like a year and a half in, because of the abuse they've taken on Facebook. And like I said, all you have to do is Google CTV or CBC and put in Pam Mood, Mayor Pam Mood, and watch her interview last night on TV. And if that doesn't hit home or have an impact on you, there's something wrong, because she is definitely personally affected, both her and her family. She's had death threats. She's had everything on social media, and they can't stop it. So again, those are my comments. I'm fine with passing the report the way it is, but I think we should quickly on the disabled comments part, because right now staff has no direction really. So they leave comments on sometimes, and then one of us 7 texts somebody else, and we text Paul and say, you got to turn off comments. Do you see that comment? Because no matter how nice or positive a post you put on, someone will twist it. I posted Happy Canada Day when I was away on the town site, because you could post, and someone made a derogatory and very rude comment to me back. So I text somebody and the comment was removed. But then once you do that, then you get accused as well of stifling someone's transparency and freedom of speech. So just disable comments right from the start and problem solved, in my opinion. So that's my 2 cents worth.
I do support disabling comments immediately, and for different reasons. But it has to be consistent, because even if you can't comment on one, you'll go to, there was a comment about wings at the, or there was an ad about wings at the Legion, and somebody of course went there with their grievance because they couldn't respond on the town's Facebook page on an issue that they felt was important. it is all driven by analytics, and the analytics, unfortunately, as we know, are driven by anger, hate, and other things that can explode and go viral. That's the idea behind it all. But I am supportive, and even if we could just do it for a 30-day trial with a disclaimer in there saying that if you have a question about this, here's the staff person that you contact, or here's the email address that you use to get in touch with Town Hall. The other thing is, from a governance point of view, I get questions and I have nothing to do with operations. So why why do I get questions? There's somebody tagging me saying, Alison Strong, what does this mean? Right? It's so this is one way of actually grooming the community to know that operations are not part of council's jurisdiction. They are ultimately, I guess, but it's not like a decision to turn off the power for 2 hours. That has nothing to do with me. So if we can educate the public through this in some way, I'm all in favor of it.
I also think that where we're using it as an information board, that's what we basically use it for, that we should definitely make sure on our posts that we have either the right staff person or the right platform or the website or an email address. If there are questions or comments people want to make, they should have an opportunity to respond and to engage, but just not publicly on social media to say anything you want. So, I think it's important that we give them an opportunity to respond, but if anybody's on Facebook, they definitely have email. One doesn't exist without the other. So just like they can go on and be keyboard warriors on Facebook, they can write us an email with their comments and then we can respond professionally. So, Deputy Mayor.
Given the discussion this evening, I would like to propose a motion that we that council direct staff to use social media, as the policy statement says, as an official communication tool to share timely and accurate information with the public, but to use it with the default setting of no comments, and with the provision that appropriate contact information be provided so that public are able to access further information on whatever may be posted, should that be appropriate.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Strong. Any further discussion on the motion? Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion carried 6-1 with Councillor Daphne voting in the negative. So do we want to move on the rest of the policy? We need staff needs some direction on the rest of the policy. So is someone prepared to move the recommendation, or are we deferring it? That's up to you folks. Anybody?
I guess. My friend here, Councillor Daphne, says that she knows that it doesn't apply to her official social media account, but we do have council that we've created social media accounts, and I hear from people all the time saying, thank you for letting me know. I didn't realize that was going on. So I think it is a useful thing. But does that mean that that we are treated differently?
Yeah, so just for clarity, it wouldn't apply to the ones that you folks have made. It's the ones that are owned and managed and operated by the town and staff. And there is like a little provision in the policy there to say it's the onus of the councillor, if you're creating your own, to say, the boilerplate, these opinions are mine or I share them. They don't necessarily reflect the will of council. And then just for other clarification on some points. So the deputy mayor had mentioned too about the council oversight, and on one end, the policy is too long and too detailed, but also putting in a bit more detailed scenarios in terms of council. I don't necessarily think you would want to capture that in a policy because then you are painting yourselves into a corner a little bit. We do put in the staff template, there's always the communications section, and we try to put that forward. So I think if you think back to like the marketing levy or something where there is a part of the staff recommendation that we propose we engage short-term operators. And given as things go forward at the council table, council is very aware of the proposed engagement strategies. So that is always an option where it's not necessarily baked into the policy, but typically considered within the staff report and for council discussion and for council to provide more input to say, hey, we want like a town hall on this, or we think you should move beyond the suggested targeted and and talk to more groups of people or talk to our accessibility committee or so on and so forth. So that is an opportunity. And just a reminder of the fluidity of policies, that if council chose to pass a policy and down the road there's a more comprehensive communication strategy, comprehensive policy, recognizing that that one is a big policy and a big strategy that looks at engagement and public participation and platforms and different models. Definitely social media could be absorbed in that, but if council wanted something for the parameters of what we're doing right now, the policy could be approved and just form part and parcel of that bigger strategy down the road. And I think that was it.
Thank you. So we've already voted on
Deputy Mayors.
Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, and again, for clarity, because the questions that I find it confusing who is impacted by this. So the questions with regard to councillor pages and so on. Under scope, it says this policy applies to all official social media accounts operated by the town of Luneburg and to employees and council members. So council members don't have, we don't operate the official, that's done by staff. So how does it apply to council members? I guess I'm not quite sure what that means, why that phrase.
Yeah, so perhaps I'm trying to put too much in one sentence there, but Jamie, no, don't. But in terms of, there is that slight provision in there. So it's almost like when we look at the social media policy, accompanying documents, as we've discussed, kind of, there should be like an employee tech agreement and a council tech agreement. So there's some stuff that just don't make sense to put into the policy with all the details. But we do try to cover just that one short clause that says, as a councillor, if you are making your own council pages, you just have to clearly identify that it's not a town page, it's not operated. The opinions are of your own and, not necessarily the voice of council as a whole. And then same with staff, we did put a little bit in there just to say, you have to conduct yourself with some professionalism. So we strongly discourage through the policy and through HR policies that a staff member is not bashing our own Facebook posts or speaking about the town of Lunenburg in a derogatory manner or something as an employee. So again, those are kind of captured in some more HR or tech agreements. So high level in the policy just to reinforce that, but that more internal personnel part would be separate.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Deputy Mayor?
Not sure.
Okay, so there is a recommendation in front of us. We can do one of three things. We can approve the social media policy, we can provide further edits and bring it back, or we can just not refer the policy to a regular council meeting and take no further action. So basically kill it. So what's the pleasure of this room and the deputy mayor, of course? Is anyone prepared to make any kind of a motion? Because if we don't make a motion, then I'm not sure what happens. Councillor Babineau.
I would be prepared to move the recommendation that that council approve the social media policy as presented.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Fullerton. Any discussion on the motion as presented? Councillor Strong.
I do feel it's important that it has a communications policy to dovetail into.
Any other comments? Seeing no other comments, all those in favor of passing the communication social media policy as presented, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-2 with the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Daphne voting in the negative. So we'll move on to the inclement weather policy that's in front of us. And that's Paul.
Thank you, Council. Provided to you tonight is brought back as the inclement weather policy. This has been before Council several times. Sorry, I'm losing my page here. 1 second. There we go. As seen, has been brought since March 17th and has come before council. The inclement weather policy is really to establish a process and protocol for opening and closing of facilities as it relates to weather and inclement weather situations. Brought forward here again, there were some minor updates that were done in May and April. Perhaps the clerk can provide, Kayla can provide a little bit more detail to the final changes, but I believe not much has changed so from this, other than for, if I'm not mistaken, informing council of any closures or updates to facility openings or facility changes at that point, if I'm not mistaken, from the last level of changes. And that was where we have with that. So council, back to you if you are prepared to pass the policy or not.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any comments, questions, concerns about the draft inclement weather and temporary facility closure policy? If there's no questions or comments, there is a motion or recommendation in front of us. Is someone prepared to move that? Moved by Councillor Strong. You have to read it out.
It's not snowing out. I would like to move that council approve the inclement weather policy as presented.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Babineau or Daphne. Arm wrestle over it. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried. Yep, 6-1 with the Deputy Mayor voting in the negative. So we're down to 11, notice of motion, information requests, and council reports. So tonight we'll start to the left of me. So Councillor Fullerton, you're up.
Just a few quick updates that have events that have happened that I have participated in since the last council meeting in June. The first one was the grand opening of the landing shelter in Bridgewater by the South Shore Open Doors Association. And it is a very impressive facility, not just an emergency shelter, but also transitional housing. And there is a full complement of staff that can counsel people and help them get into a place where they have jobs and can have permanent housing. The Lueneburg Waterfront Association had its symposium and presented a draft of its strategic action plan. And so there are a lot of these strategic plans going around. And I'm curious to see how they all intersect with one another in Lunenburg. Canada Day was a big success. We had a good turnout at the Pride flag raising. And I have a report from one of the participants among the Pie Munchers robotics team that competed at a national level. One of the things to remember about these kids who went representing Blue Nose Academy at this national competition is that they are grade 4 students. Much of the competition was 14 to 16-year-old students. And my next door neighbor is one of the kids that is part of that has been part of that team. And he talked to me in a very animated way about some of the things he really liked and really did not like about the competition. But overall, it was a very good experience for them. They don't know where they ranked in the competition because the only participants that were acknowledged were those who placed first, second, and third. But it was a very good experience for them, and they're pretty grateful for being able to have participated in that. And the only other thing I wanted to talk about is upcoming is the 100th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Legion on July 17th. Now, there will be a more official, formal event in the fall for the 100th anniversary here in Lueneburg, but this Friday night, everyone is invited to stop in for a burger and a beverage between 5 and 7 p.m. as an anniversary celebration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greek.
Nothing for this evening, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Babineau.
Well, Councillor Fullerton mentioned the Pride flag raising, and I just wanted to say that I had the privilege of giving the speech at that event, which I've never given an official speech for the town before. So thank you to the mayor and the deputy mayor for not being available.
Thank you. Councillor Daphne.
I don't have much to say except that I'm happy that we're on the downward slide towards fall and that the nights are getting longer.
Thank you, Councillor Sarong.
I sit here checking off what everybody else already said, but I have a few things, and one of them is that we had a really fun time in the Pride Parade too, with our bubble makers that were electric, and I recommend them. They're much easier on the finger, pulling the trigger. But the people behind us were the Petite Pride aliens, and so everybody was like excited to see us, but we didn't realize that Petite was behind us, and they were who was the excitement was about. Library in Lunenburg has really upped the ante, the South Shore Library, and they had Rachel Reed in on Saturday morning. Some of you might know the tickets went on sale at the Academy. The lineup was down Callback Street. Sold out in the morning. The fish ice house was packed with people, and we had the benefit of their air conditioning, so that was fun. But it just shows that if you have someone come to this town, people will come from, they were telling me, Wolfville, Halifax, Truro, to see that person, and very affordable too. It was $20 a ticket. Library's going full steam. I have a meeting there tomorrow, and Foundation, I'll see you guys on Thursday. Don't want to understate that we have a national event taking place on July 25th in the town, the same day as the dory racing. I'm starting to feel the enthusiasm about this event. Staff will be presenting something through social media in the next bit about who's lined up to speak, but some good things are coming our way, and that'll end July, and we'll see you all back in August. Please don't have as much stuff in the agenda.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I thank all of my colleagues for being at events that I haven't been able to attend the last week or so. And I know we were well represented with lots of enthusiasm and lots of folks around, lots going on in Lueneburg all summer. So that's great. And just a shout out to Councillor Daphne. Wish you were with me today. It was 40 degrees here. So thought you would appreciate that. But I do want to actually, on a serious note, give a notice of motion. And that notice of motion is that staff be directed to immediately amend the MPS and LUB to institute parking requirements for new development and height allowance changes in marine industrial zones in the town of Lueneburg.
So that's a notice of motion and it'll come up at the next meeting or a future meeting. Thank you. Any other comments, Deputy Mayor?
No, that's all for tonight.
Thank you very much. I just have a few comments. I'd like to first of all thank the deputy mayor and the rest of the team for basically doing a great job the last 3 weeks. From all accounts, even when I was away, I've heard nothing but resounding results on the Canada Day event. I think the community was alive, and I want to thank the Board of Trade and the museum, as well, Fisheries Museum of the Atlantic, for partnering and having the event on their lot, and Robert Young for buying the hot dogs, or support or helping buy the hot dogs. So again, a big thank you to Robert Young, and he served all day. So Robert Young loves Canada Day. So thank you, Robert. I also just want to say quickly that Saturday the 25th, if you have nothing to do, Lueneburg's a happening spot. The CDRA International Dory Races start at around 9:15 on the Lueneburg waterfront. And then at 1 o'clock, it's followed by the 50th anniversary of the World Heritage Convention signing. And that's basically run by the federal government. So we're all waiting, in staff as well, coordinating. So we're all waiting to see the agenda and see what's going on, but watch Facebook and social medias and our website, and you'll see updates as we get them. But again, next Saturday, the town of Lueneburg is the place to be. So next on the list is items for consideration at committee of the whole. We all know that if we have any items we want to talk about or consider, we should send them to Kayla or Paul so they get on the next committee of the whole agenda, which is September 1st, 2026. The motion action list is on the back of every council agenda. So we keep looking at it and hopefully eliminating things as we go along. Paul?
One last comment for council. We'd be remiss if we don't say we will be missing Kayla for the next year plus. Congratulations, Kayla. We are very supportive of you and where you're going with this and expanding your family. So congratulations, and we look forward to having you back in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, congratulations. And we're certainly going to miss you, but I hope there's a new Leafs fan on the horizon. So next, there is no closed session items for tonight. So a motion for adjournment is in order. Moved by Councillor Fullerton, seconded by Councillor Babineau. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone that came tonight and watching from home.